Well, I'd like to get the seminar started today. Can I get your attention, please? Thank you. I think the first thing I'd like to do, though, because is just to say I feel like something is really missing here, and that's Maurice Cowderer. And so, if it's possible, I'd just like to have a moment of silence, okay, for Maurice. And thank you, because it's been years and years and years, and they're always at these seminars. You know, it's really.
And they also contribute to the seminar.
Contributing
financially every year.
Okay, thank you, Michael. But it's really, I think all of us are shocked and sad. So, anyway, I'd like to introduce our seminar speaker today, and it's Vaughn Walton, who's an associate professor of entomology in the horticultural crops department at Oregon State University in Corvallis. Vaughn holds a three-way appointment. Actually, I guess it's a four-way appointment. We'll say three-way, teaching, research, and extension. So he also teaches an undergraduate course called Pests, Plagues, and Politics, and then he teaches graduate courses in integrated pest management, biological control. Vaughn is from South Africa, and all of his degrees were from the University of Stellenbosch, which is one of the leading institutions in South Africa. He joined the Oregon State University faculty in 2006, and his research focuses on perennial cropping systems with a focus on modeling, biological control, herbivore-induced plant volatiles, and mating disruption. And since moving to Oregon, he's worked on a management of several important invasive species of fruit and vine crops, including vine mealybug, spotted-winged Drosophila, and brown marmorated stinkbug. And among his awards since coming to Oregon State University are the Oldfield Jackman Team Award from the College of Agricultural Sciences, which he got in 2013, the Entomological Society of America Pacific Branch Entomology Team Award, the Entomology Society of America Pacific Branch Excellence in IPM Award, and the Savory Award for Outstanding Young Faculty Member of the College of Agricultural Sciences of Oregon State. So clearly Vaughn's accomplished a lot in this short time that he's been at Oregon State. And as these team awards might suggest, Vaughn is really a highly collaborative person, and that's how I've come to know him. We've had several collaborations also with Joanna, and so it was our pleasure to be able to invite him here to UC Davis to do this seminar. And I have to say that I consider him one of the very best of the new generation of IPM entomologists. And I think Vaughn is going to be one of the really outstanding ones in horticultural crops entomology. So the topic of Vaughn's seminar today is complexities associated with two invasive pests, challenges, and opportunities. Vaughn?
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much for a really fantastic introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the invitation here as well. And what I'd like to do today is I'm going to talk about a pest that I've never worked on. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a pest that we've been working on for about 4 years now. And so everyone who's listed there does not include everyone that I've ever worked on. It's just the people that we've published papers on in the last 4 years that I'm going to be talking about today. So you can see Joanna's name is up there as well. I think Hannah Barak was at UC Davis at one stage as well. I don't know, you guys can have a look there and see if you know some of the names there. But I'd like to continue our collaboration. We're also working on other issues in vineyards as well, and hopefully we can continue our collaboration in that regards. So the bulk of my talk today will be dealing with spotted-winged Drosophila. It's a problem that's a West Coast problem initially. Now it's a problem in the United States. It's also a problem in Europe. And the initial team that got funded to work on spotted-winged Drosophila includes people from Oregon State University, a really nice, strong group from UC Davis. Oh, Doug's also a UC Davis graduate, isn't he? Doug Walsh and other scientists at Washington State University, UC, USDA, and then private companies as well. So as I said earlier, I'm going to be talking a little bit about a bug that I've never worked on in the past. And this is the slide, a slide that one of my students gave me in my pests, plagues, and politics class. Anyone here able to identify what this bug is? Colorado potato beetle. I don't work on potatoes. I've never worked on Colorado potato beetle. These are actually Second World War posters that came out in the Ukraine and East Europe area in the 1940s during the Second World War. And what people believed during that period was that the United States, when they came into Europe to fight, the soldiers brought Colorado potato beetle in, and that caused famine in that area. And so people were paying the school kids to get rid of Colorado potato beetles, drop them in paraffin cans and that type of thing. So big problem at that stage. That's then. So now, what's the situation with Colorado potato beetle in Eastern Europe at the moment? If you're into social media, there's a lot of this type of thing coming out in Ukraine. And basically what's happening is there are those two groups of people. It's the separatists and the people that are, I guess, on the side of Ukraine. I'm not really very good into the politics. But what is seen as separatists are Colorado potato beetle. They have this little insignia. It's called the St. George Cross. And the separatists wear these little weapons on them when they fight over there. So there's a lot of kind of interesting politics going on. Now the thing is, when you're looking at a pest like this, it's always a lot more complex than what we see on the surface. And for those of you who don't have, I'll give you a very brief history from my side, from Colorado potato beetle. But we all know that Colorado potato beetle came into the New World, into North America, with cattle being driven up into Texas, and they were transferred onto these bison, carried in on burr wheat, and then finally they made the switch onto potatoes. And so the story at this stage, the best history that we have, is the Colorado potato beetle with trade of potatoes from the United States went into Europe, and that's actually how Colorado potato beetle got into Europe. So several different stories, very interesting. But there are some similarities between this story and then the story of spotted wing Drosophila. Colorado potato beetle created many opportunities for people to work on the problem and come to new conclusions. As I said, it's a very complex story, and we can go on talking about this for quite some time. So the bulk of my talk today will be dealing with spotted wing Drosophila. This is the bug that no one ever saw coming. There's been a lot of work done on Drosophila melanogaster. There's been fantastic papers published on that. There's been a lot of genomic work, a lot of groundbreaking work done in genomics on Drosophila melanogaster. If we look at spotted wing Drosophila, it became a problem in California first, about 5 or 6 years ago now, I think. Problem on cherries, on strawberries, on raspberries, and on blueberries as well. There has been reports of spotted wing Drosophila in wine grapes and in peaches as well. What is the economic impact of this bug? At this stage, this bug attacks total crop value nationally of about $4.3 billion. Estimated crop losses every year in the United States is about $718 million. If we look at management costs for this bug, at this stage, it depends on the season, anything between $129 and $172 million. That's just managing this bug. That does not include losses or consignments that's waiting in the harbors because they can't be shipped out, because they can't do identifications of the bugs or any of that. If we look at a percentage of the total farm gate value that this bug causes damage to, it's anything between 6 and 8% of the total farm gate value. That's a significant quantity of money that growers are putting into managing this bug. on an annual basis. So before this bug arrived in Oregon, growers generally did not spray any pesticide. I'll give you quite kind of a short overview of what we're finding in Oregon. Hardly ever spray any pesticides. Fantastic crop to produce blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and so on. At this stage, this is what it looks like in Oregon. You've got these growers with these massive sprayers. They're spraying anything between 5 and 10 sprays per season. They're using very toxic compounds. So as I said, anything between 5 and 7 I had here. It can go up to 10, and this is a breakdown of that cost. 2012 was a low cost year in terms of management. 2013 was a very high cost. So only for blueberries, if we look at blueberry values only, we're looking at about $8 million of losses just managing this bug. So initially when the bug arrived here, we think, compare this bug to mayfly or olive fly, tiny little thing. We're going to just annihilate this bug very, very quickly. And that's a big mistake. A really bad mistake if you think that that's what the situation is. For those of you who don't know what this bug looks like in more detail, the females have this serrated ovipositor, and that ovipositor allows it to lay its eggs in blueberries. Growers will harvest their blueberries at the end of the season after they've put all their input costs and labor and shipping into it. They'll ship these blueberries that look okay, it gets into the market, and then it just deteriorates. So those very first initial years, these growers were spending all this money and they were losing a heck of a lot of money because they had these flies in them. These flies can lay multiple eggs per season, and the larvae develop in the fruit. And this is one of the biggest problems. At this stage, if we look at managing this bug, we're only able to manage these bugs in the adult stage. So how does this bug fit into the environment? Some of the very first questions that we had to answer was to try and figure out how this bug overwinters. How does it make it through the winter period? We did some initial experiments which we now realize had several shortcomings to it, but this is some initial information that we had coming out of this. We exposed these bugs at different relatively low temperatures, and we found gradual decrease or gradual mortality as the season progresses. We hardly found these bugs overwintering for more than 108 days at 10 degrees centigrade. However, there is now new information that's come to the fore that you get these different morphs. A lot of work has been done on Drosophila melanogaster and other Drosophilas where people find adaptations to cold winter temperatures. And they've been finding this with Drosophila Suzukii as well. So what you get is you get these summer forms which are generally smaller in size and has less melanization. And then you have these winter forms. And this is a paper that's kind of in the process of being submitted in the next few weeks. And what we see here is that when these bugs are in their winter form, they survive at much higher rates. So that's one aspect. The other aspect that makes this bug very, very difficult to control is that it uses multiple hosts. And there's a very, very long list of alternate hosts. Increasing evidence shows us now that many of these alternate hosts, including these wild seedling cherries and so on, can harbor those late overwintering spotted wing Drosophila populations. And what we've seen by doing seasonal monitoring, trapping, is that if you have a lot of areas which have blackberries, and so these areas down here are areas that have blackberries as opposed to areas where there is nothing surrounding it, like the California situation, you're in general finding higher populations earlier in the season in those areas. We're finding what growers are reporting is that if they have blackberries or surrounding cherries, that's usually where the problem starts. If they have fields that's kind of in the middle of a grass field or so, you hardly ever have any issues with spotted wing Drosophila as indicated by these blue areas here. So blue indicates no populations, and red indicates higher populations. Kind of following up on the alternate hosts, one of my grad students did some work on cherry and blueberry blossoms early in the early portion of the season. We had these simulated temperatures where we have different photo phases and fluctuating temperatures. We exposed flies to those temperatures, and we exposed them with alternate hosts and without alternate hosts. There's a clear indication that alternate hosts play a very important role in helping these flies get through their overwintering period. Something else that I think we may use to our advantage in future here on the West Coast is the fact that humidity has a very big impact on egg maturation and longevity as well. The lower the humidity, the less fecund these bugs are and the shorter their life cycles are. So on the West Coast we can do a lot of manipulation. I have a slide a little later in the talk that will help us potentially managing this bug in that regard. And here we have another slide of daily activity levels. So you have your longer term activity levels, which I have a slide of in the next few slides from now. This is work by Kelly Hamby and Joanna, and I think Frank, you on that paper as well, showing activity levels during the day. What we're doing at the moment is we're looking at oppositional activity during the day as well. That's really important for us in Oregon. We have cooler seasons when our fruit starts ripening. We want to try and figure out when these bugs lay their eggs during the day. However, the most important factors when you're looking at population dynamics of any bug, the most important factors that at least in my eyes, that we need to look at from a pest management side is what is the effect of temperature on reproduction and longevity. So I had a student agree to do this work. Luckily, I didn't do this work myself. What she did is she subjected these flies to different temperatures, starting at low temperatures, and I'm not showing all the temperatures here. We went to temperatures below 10 degrees centigrade up to 28 degrees centigrade. And as you can expect, at the very high temperatures, you will have relatively short longevity as opposed to cooler temperatures where you'll have longer lifespan that's much longer. If we look at reproduction, we're finding relatively low reproduction at low temperatures, higher reproduction at more optimal temperatures, and then shorter reproduction periods but lower reproduction at very high temperatures. So what we did is we took all this information and we tried to figure out how we can use this as a potential management tool for growers. Because growers were finding these issues, they're having to spray 10 times per season. We want to tell them, listen, when should you spray? How should you structure your spray programs or your management programs? Before we could get to that, we first had to start looking at seasonal phenology of these bugs. And so in this slide, we have 4 regions. And I'll focus on 2 regions for the remainder of today's talk. The one region that I'd like to specifically focus on is the Willamette Valley in Oregon, and then the second is the San Joaquin Valley in California. So this data is from a paper that was published in 2011. So if you're looking at the Willamette Valley here, we're finding that populations take longer to increase because you have a very high peak as the temperatures increase later in the season. And then it starts dropping down as the temperatures start going down a little bit. If we look at the San Joaquin Valley, and this is work that was done in 2011, subsequent work has been showing similar results as well. You have an optimal temperature early in the spring with an initial peak, suboptimal very high temperatures in the middle of the season, and a drop in fly catches, and then slightly more optimal temperatures later in the season with a drop of temperature a little bit later. So how does this fit in with the temperature data that we actually looked at? There are several tools that one can look at. One of the tools that one can use when you use life table work is you can calculate degree days. Now the thing is, when you look at degree days, it tells you a little bit about the season for that specific bug. So if we compare two seasons in a region, we have the 2013 season year, which has more rapid degree day accumulation, as opposed to the 2012 season, which has less rapid accumulation of degree days. So if you simply look at those two lines there, you intuitively, at least me, intuitively, you'd think that the 2013 season is the bad season, as opposed to the 2012 season. However, if we take those developmental parameters, we put them into a matrix model, and we use seasonal temperatures on a daily basis, and we calculate population increase as well as longevity, we get something totally different. This is the exact same season. This is the output for those two seasons. So what we're finding here is that it's flipped around. 2013 has, actually this is the wrong one now. This is actually not the right slide. I made a mistake here. But I have an example where the 2013 season shows higher population increase. I had the wrong first slide. What we're finding is that you're finding these temperatures that are absolutely optimal for spotted wing Drosophila. There may be a little bit lower. You're finding lower degree day calculations. You're finding virtually no trap counts, and suddenly you start finding your first fruit infestation within a week of the first trap counts. If you look at your population outputs, you're finding that you're seeing differences already early in the earlier portion of the season, as opposed to trapping or monitoring, which only shows those differences very late in the season. So the question here is monitoring using traps a useful tool at this stage? I'm not 100% sure about that. So this is what a typical population model output looks like for an area like the Willamette Valley in Oregon. So down here we have our temperatures. In this middle portion of the graph here, we have our life stages. And in the top portion, we have total population increase. So it's pretty clear from this graph here that we have very similar outputs for the Willamette Valley. The big test for me is actually if we look at the San Joaquin Valley, where you have two peaks. So here we have that exact example that I showed, or not, this is a few years later. You have your early peak and you have your late peak, and these are your temperatures here. If you fit the population model to it that way, you're finding your two peaks, which is at this stage relatively encouraging. So this is only part of the story. The other part of the story is the life stages. We're looking at eggs, which are indicated in deep orange color here, larvae, pupae, and adults. So in the Willamette, in the San Joaquin Valley, we can find early in the season we get relatively erratic life stages. In some cases, you will have the majority of the total population being adults. But as the season progresses, you start getting more of a stable population. So if we look at this whole population here, we're finding that approximately 5% of the total population that we're trapping in the field are adults. The remainder of the population are in life stages that we don't necessarily see. So what growers do is they basically take a pesticide and they start spraying pesticides, and they're affecting that little portion of the population right there. So let's compare these two regions, the Willamette Valley as well as the San Joaquin Valley, with each other. So if we're looking at San Joaquin Valley, the population estimates show us that we have an increase in populations much earlier in the Parlier area as opposed to Salem. but you get a drop off because of those suboptimal temperatures in the middle of the season. So there's a difference here if we look at these two regions. The one difference is that in the Parlier area, you get two bottlenecks. You get this early bottleneck and then you get a mid-season bottleneck. In the Willamette Valley, you only have one bottleneck period, which is the late dormant period. So this brings us to how we can actually apply this model in a practical sense. So let's look at the worst case scenario first. So we're going to be looking at this scenario where you have that gradual population increase in the salient area as opposed to the San Joaquin Valley. So this is our population output for 2013, and you can see that gradual increase there. If we do a pesticide application on the 1st of June, only affecting adult populations, not taking any of the other populations out, you're basically resulting in a slight decrease in population when you do your application on the 1st of June. You're basically saving yourself 3 or 4 days, and then the problem becomes a problem again, and growers just have to keep spraying. So let's look at this a little bit differently. Let's say we're going to be doing our applications a little bit earlier in the season when we have a smaller population. Let's say we're doing our applications on the 1st of April. You're kind of seeing a similar trend. You're getting lower populations, but still you're getting an increase in population. It's an endless battle. The populations are continuously increasing. You're buying yourself a few days. Third option is let's see what happens if we take out 95% of all overwintering adults. Remember, late in the dormant season, we only have adults. Take out 95% of that using something like bait sprays or so. You do several bait sprays in the early portion of the season when you have active flies. You're dropping your populations down significantly, and there's a definite separation between those populations. But in the end, if you do your calculations, as the season progresses, you're buying yourself 22 days maximum. So you're potentially eliminating about 3 sprays on average if you're using a method like this, if we have a method that actually works. So this is the Willamette Valley. Let's move on to San Joaquin Valley. If we look at San Joaquin Valley, as I said earlier, we have 2 bottlenecks, the early season bottleneck and then the mid-season bottleneck. If you are able to take out 95% of all adults early in the season in the San Joaquin Valley, you're affecting your populations in a significant way. You're actually affecting your populations during that second peak as well. So the problem here is, we've got a solution, but we actually don't have a solution because we don't have this method at this stage of taking out those adults. So if we look at the life stages, this is what the life stages would look like, as I showed a little bit earlier. This is where you do an application mid-season, and we can see that there is some stability here. You're taking out, say, several life stages, and you're causing some instability. How does that translate to actual population levels? So you're having your effect early in the season by doing your sprays early, and you add a second spray, taking out the majority of all individuals mid-season in June. You're basically resulting in a significant drop in populations during the remainder of the season. So there's a lot of theory here, but theoretically in the San Joaquin Valley, it would be much easier to deal with spotted winged Drosophila using a lot less pesticides as opposed to the Willamette Valley. There are several other applications that we can use in this regard as well. We're also looking at manipulating temperatures on the west coast. We can play a little bit with humidity and with temperature by doing pruning, by putting out these weed mats, and then applying those manipulated temperatures to your population levels. And what growers told us or asked us at the end of last season is, how are weed mats affecting it? So if we're driving through our field, we're harvesting our berries, we have a lot of berries dropping onto the ground. Can larvae survive if they drop onto those weed mats as shown here. So basically this little triangle as shown in blue here indicates theoretical population increase of spotted wing if those berries drop onto weed mat. We looked at the actual temperatures and we found that temperatures can go above 100 degrees for over 8 hours on our hot summer days in the Willamette Valley. So this is definitely a tool that growers can use in the future, and we're doing a lot more work in that regards. We're doing pruning, we're affecting temperatures in the canopies, and that's affecting your actual pressure as the temperatures, as the season progresses. So this next slide here is another field that I'm really interested in. We're working with several scientists here in the United States as well as in Europe to try and use our population model, cycling in our population model into remote sensing data so that we can use that population model and show certain areas of high risk as the season progresses. So with some of the new technologies that's become available now, a few years ago, if you look at Europe and you zoom into a certain area in Europe, you get a relatively low resolution. So you get valleys and you get certain areas that have microclimates that may be better for spotted wing Drosophila than other areas. What we've learned from this work here is that you can increase your resolution to about 200 meters, which is a relatively small area as opposed to this area on the right-hand side here. And the actual temperatures that we have, surface temperatures are within 1 degree centigrade in terms of accuracy. So we're hoping to integrate that into a national and hopefully an international tool that will show risk for spotted wing Drosophila. That's one thing that we're interested in. Something else that we're really excited about is biological control. We know that these bugs are in surrounding vegetations. Our growers can't continue spraying as many pesticides as they have. We need to make use of our surrounding vegetation and natural enemies. So if we're looking at biological control, early science, and this is work by Todd Schlenke, who's actually now in Oregon, they were showing, the initial work at least, was showing that spotted wing Drosophila has a significant immune response against parasitoids, as shown by some of the antibodies that you find in the hemosil. And that was extremely discouraging to us at one stage. We had foreign exploration scientists go into South Korea, and we have 2 years of data actually now in South Korea where we found several very promising parasitoids. Most important are the percent parasitism rates that we're finding here. We're getting ranges of parasitism between or less than 1% up to 33%. We actually ran these percentage rates in the population model, and we found that if you get something like a 20% parasitism rate, you can take out up to 90% of the total population of spotted wing Drosophila. So if we're looking at percentages of parasitism that we find in South Korea, this is really encouraging. So the first season that we did our foreign exploration, we collected about 2,000 samples. We found these very promising individuals, parasitoids, of which this Genesee species seems to be a very specialist parasitoid. They went back to that area this year and specifically targeted the area where they found the Genesee, and instead of bringing back 2,000 samples this year, they brought back 20,000 samples. Those samples are in the quarantine facility at UC Berkeley, and so hopefully we'll be able to look at alternative control methods aside from just pesticides. So I think that's it. That's 35, how much minutes? 25 minutes. Here we are busy harvesting our blueberries, and if there are any questions, I will try and answer those.
So why did you, I may have missed this, but why did you think the spotted wing Drosophila control seemed to be easier in the San Joaquin Valley? Is it because it's at sort of geographic limit?
There's a lot of, so the question is, why do I think it's going to be easier? Just talking to Frank this morning confirmed that. He says that, temperatures are just not optimal for spotted wing Drosophila in the San Joaquin Valley. We're looking at temperatures above 30 degrees centigrade. In certain periods, you can get mean temperatures above 30 degrees centigrade, which is way above the optimal reproductive rate, and you get much shorter longevity, much lower reproductive rates. And then you have your cold winters as well. So we've got cold winters up in Oregon, but the San Joaquin Valley also has cold winters, and then you have those very hot temperatures in the middle of the summer period. Those are two aspects if you just look at the environment. But then another aspect we don't even talk about, well, we touched lightly on this, is surrounding vegetation. This is a desert area. There is not a lot of places where you have the lush surrounding vegetation that we have up in the Willamette Valley, where you have cherries ripening early, and then raspberries, and we have huckleberries up in the mountains. We have massive reservoirs for alternate hosts for these bugs up in those areas. And the temperatures are just perfect. Midsummer is, we're looking at 25 degrees centigrade maximum for only a short week period, which is optimal for spotted wing Drosophila. So I don't know. I think we're kind of stuck in Oregon. We can't compete with California in terms of environment. I think things are just so much more favorable in terms of environment, at least for this bug, in California as opposed to Oregon. Those are just a few things. I'm sure that there are other things as well.
So maybe you've said this, what stage over winters?
I did not say that so well, so my apologies.
Just the second part of this is that how far north, where are the gaps now that you think they can spread to, and how far north would that be?
I'm going to try and answer it as best as I can. The first question I think I can answer better than the second part. So the first part is, what life stage do they overwinter in? To the best of our knowledge, we know that the majority of survivors are adult females. So you're at the end of the winter period, you have old females that maybe have mated already. And so you have those very old females that have a very low reproductive rate. And this morning we talked a little bit about collecting the bugs. We can confirm that. We should confirm that with collecting them and looking at reproductive potential at the end of the winter period. But all evidence showed, field collections as well as our temperature-dependent developmental parameters show that it's adult females that make it through winter. And then the second part of the question is, what kind of latitudes can we expect it? What would be the most northern latitudes? I know that there are scientists finding them in Europe pretty far north. We do find them in Quebec, in Canada, British Columbia, in most of the production regions up there. It's been found in the United Kingdom as well. I think I talked to a scientist who has found it up in Scotland in the United, it's still in the United Kingdom, aren't they? Yeah. So I don't know. I think that if we look at Michigan, for instance, we're finding them in Michigan, but we're finding them much later in the season. If we compare Michigan to Oregon or Washington, the climate is way more harsh, but we're still finding them there.
So they're overwintering in northern Michigan or Michigan as adults.
Most likely.
Those winters.
Most likely. What do you say?
I was going to say, we actually submitted a proposal again this year that didn't get funded, but partly what we were looking at was there's some speculation by the people in the northern latitudes that maybe they migrate there every year and don't overwinter. I tend to think that they're overwintering, but there's a group that think that they're not, and that was one of the things we were hoping to do with Joanna too, was look at some of the populations from the different areas and how they change year to year.
So one of my grad students did some work under protected environments, and she looked at greenhouses and crawl spaces and that type of thing. And I took some of the slides out of here where we built in a refuge factor. And we're finding, so initially we couldn't understand why these flies were making it through winter. Our initial lab data didn't show that they were surviving for such long periods. And then we built in this refuge factor using stable lights. So you use satellite imaging and you use a refuge factor based on stable lights, which would indicate environments that are slightly different because of us as humans. So that may be one way in which they could find slightly more suitable environments that will help them get through. Maybe in some of the forests and so on, you get more stable environments. If you have snow, you have maybe slightly more stable environments as well. I don't think we have a full answer to the whole story at this stage yet. But it's a problem in Michigan. Blueberry growers in Michigan has had issues with it, which was totally unexpected. Rufus Isaacs at Michigan State University, within the first year of finding it in Oregon, they found it in Michigan as well, which was very surprising.
Yeah, and if you go into Watsonville, right, Salinas, I mean, there's the caneberries, there's all those strawberries, there's fruit everywhere. And it seems like it almost needs to be a greater amount of sanitation, change in production practices. When I go down there, it feels like you can time sprays the best you possibly can, but given, you know, the nature of that environment there for these flies, they're going to be impossible to control. So is that something? I realize it's not a trivial thing to do to kind of get growers to do that, but it seems to me that is that a tack to take?
A lot of growers do sanitation, and we talked about sanitation a lot at these stakeholder meetings. And there was a grower, actually, I think it was a Driscoll's grower or someone, and he had some really good data showing that sanitation does have an impact. But the question is, how much are you willing to spend on sanitation? You can spend a heck of a lot of money just cleaning things up and have an impact, but when do you have, what would be the biggest, what would be economically the least costly? And sanitation doesn't necessarily only mean you need to pick up fruit. It can mean you put out weed mats so that you have those, whatever drops onto the ground gets fried up by the sun in any case. Or you could sanitize by using pesticides as well, I guess. But for organic growers, that's something that they do. You pick sanitation methods that they use is they go through more often. They do their harvest. As soon as the berries ripen, they harvest them. And it just take away all those potential alternate hosts for them. And one thing that I think is kind of interesting is the fact that spotted wing Drosophila don't really do very well on overripe fruit. They tend to do pretty badly on overripe fruit. That's work that Jana Lee did, where she looked at reproductive potential on overripe fruit, and it seems to be dropping off in overripe fruit. And the full understanding of that, I don't think anyone has a real clear understanding of that at this stage. But sanitation is definitely pretty important. It's just the costly work. There was a question in front here, and then.
Oh, it was related to. So, is the native home Korea?
The native home of spotted wing Drosophila, to the best of our knowledge, what most people say is East Asia. I guess Joanna and Frank would know.
But you went to Korea for the.
So that's political. There are political reasons why we went to South Korea as opposed to China or Japan. So the initial trip was planned to Japan, and the reason why that didn't happen was because of Fukushima. This happened exactly at that time. We couldn't get in there, and so the other plan, the alternate plan, was go to China. But it's extremely difficult to get these materials out of China, and so the easier option at this stage was South Korea, and we found reasonably decent collections from those.
So what was the climate range of that area where you had the collection?
So the first trip was made in general, it's a very hot region. It's maybe hotter than what we would find in Oregon. It's a subtropical to tropical type climate, but you do get a cooler period. So what the researchers did wrong, I guess, in the first year when they only collected 2,000 samples is they went in at the harvest period, which would be like San Joaquin Valley in the middle of the season, you're struggling to find good fruit, that type of thing. The second time they went in, I think they timed it really well. It was cooler, and the fruit was in perfect condition, and they had no trouble finding enough samples during that period. There were mountainous areas that are definitely cooler, and then there were coastal areas that were not too harsh either. So they were trying to target a range of areas and look at a certain time of the season, which was maybe a little bit better. Another question.
Just had a couple of questions. One related to your remote sensing work. Have you done anything with drones with the thermal camera, like in your refuge areas, to see if you can get specific differentials in temperature, if they're associated in one place or another?
I'm not knowledgeable in terms of remote sensing whatsoever. However, I recently attended a talk where people are working on drones, and I think the information you can get in from drones are maybe more accurate than the satellite data.
Just a spatial differential.
Yeah, I think you can get way higher resolution and accuracy. At least that's what my understanding was from the talk that I saw. The people that I'm hoping that we can work with, I think that information is also pretty good, but maybe the drone technology would be something that companies, bigger production companies could use to their advantage as well in the future. But that's a long way off still. But that's a technology that really has a lot of promise to it as well.
And then my other question is, have you identified any attractants of this species as a way to use that in an IPM to get them towards something?
Yeah, and I did not touch on attractants whatsoever. It's not my field of study. There is a lot of really good work done here at UC Davis on those. There is a lot of good work done in many other parts by chemical ecologists. There was a chemical ecologist, USDA scientist up in Washington who did some really good work. The thing with the chemical ecology is, with the compounds at least that are commercialized at this stage, it's a complex list of chemicals that are not, you have to keep them separate from each other. I think it's something that, the chemical, if we can find something that's really attractive, we've got a lot of options that we can
But
try.
some things they're depositing in the berries, right? Is where they're enabling.
That's
So
right.
it's something about that they're attracted to.
There is some fruit volatiles that play a role. That's one of the understandings. And then I know Frank and others have done work with yeasts and so on, which are also attractive. So there are a lot of people have been talking about pheromones as well, but this bug doesn't really. It does use pheromones, but very short range. I think that a lot of progress is going to be made in terms of chemical ecology using some of the genomic techniques, and I think that my understanding is that there'll be something that's where the biggest results will be coming from. It's not my field at all, but if we can have a tool that's something that's very attractive, then we're in a really good position. We're going to be in a good position.
Thank you.
One more question. I'm thinking about, if you have cherries, right, that develop through the season, there's got to be a point where they're not susceptible, and then all of a sudden they get to a certain size, or they're soft enough, and then they become susceptible to the fly. So you don't really have to worry about protecting cherries up until that point. Is that?
Yeah. So the current understanding is, and I left those slides out as well. You wait until you get first color. As soon as you get first color and softening of the skin, there's some good work done at North Carolina State University where they were looking at penetrating values. That's pretty clear. As soon as you get an increase in bricks, decrease in penetrating values, that's when the fruit becomes susceptible. So you get a short period in cherries That's cherries. If you look at blueberries, if we look at one of the varieties of blueberries that we have, one of our workhorse varieties in Oregon is Liberty. It ripens over a 3-month period. So your first berries are ready early, and then it goes the whole way until the end of the season. So that's not an option for that. But I think what will start happening is that you'll get less reliance on those workhorse, in blueberries at least, those workhorse varieties where you're going to have to put 10 sprays out, and try and find varieties that are very discrete in terms of their ripening period, very short ripening period, so maybe you can do 1 or 2 sprays a season. That's another way of looking at it. But with cherries, I think that there are some really good programs that work really well. But with blueberries in Oregon, we're in a pretty bad situation at the moment. Do we have time for one more little question? I think there was one more question.
So you mentioned those special territories, but what about generalist predators? Is there anything that
So the generalist predator question, Jana Lee at the USDA did some work on the generalist predators. It doesn't look as if they have much of an impact at this stage. It's relatively minimal. You have these bugs reproducing at such a phenomenal rate. A density-dependent type biocontrol agent seems to be the way to go at this stage. Some people are looking at microbials as well, and there is potential promise under certain environmental conditions using microbials. But at this stage, we're basically in a pretty difficult situation.
So I guess with that, I'd like to thank Vaughn for being here with us, and he'll meet with the students for lunch after this. Accomplished a lot in this short time that he's been at Oregon State. And as these team awards might suggest, Vaughn is really a highly collaborative person, and that's how I've come to know him. We've had several collaborations also with Joanna, and so it was our pleasure to be able to invite him here to UC Davis to do this seminar. And I have to say that I consider him one of the very best of the new generation of IPM entomologists. And I think Vaughn is going to be one of the really outstanding ones in horticultural crops entomology. So the topic of Vaughn's seminar today is complexities associated with 2 invasive pests, challenges and opportunities. Vaughn?
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much for a really fantastic introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the invitation here as well. And what I'd like to do today is I'm going to talk about a pest that I've never worked on. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a pest that we've been working on for about 4 years now. And so everyone who's listed there never worked on in the past. And this is the slide, a slide that one of my students gave me in my pests, plagues, and politics class. Anyone here able to identify what this bug is? Colorado potato beetle. I don't work on potatoes. I've never worked on Colorado potato beetle. These are actually Second World War posters that came out in the Ukraine and East Europe area in the 1940s during the Second World War. And what people believed during that period was that the United States, when they came into Europe to fight, the soldiers brought Colorado potato beetle in, and that caused famine in that area. And so people were paying the school kids to get rid of Colorado potato beetles, drop them in paraffin cans and that type of thing. So big problem at that stage. That's then. So now, what's the situation with Colorado potato beetle in Eastern Europe at the moment? If you're into social media, there's a lot of, does not include everyone that I've ever worked on. It's just the people that we've published papers on in the last 4 years that I'm going to be talking about today. So you can see Joanna's name is up there as well. I think Hannah Barak was at UC Davis at one stage as well. I don't know, you guys can have a look there and see if you know some of the names there, but I'd like to continue our collaboration. We're also working on other issues in vineyards as well, and hopefully we can continue our collaboration in that regards. So the bulk of my talk today will be dealing with spotted wing Drosophila. It's a problem that's a West Coast problem initially. Now it's a problem in the United States. It's also a problem in Europe. And the initial team that got funded to work on spotted wing Drosophila includes people from Oregon State University, a really nice, strong group from UC Davis. Oh, Doug's also a UC Davis graduate, isn't he? Doug Walsh and other scientists at Washington State University, UC, USDA, and then private companies as well. So as I said earlier, I'm going to be talking a little bit about a bug that I've...
And he also teaches an undergraduate course called Pests, Plagues, and Politics. And then he teaches graduate courses in integrated pest management, biological control. Vaughn is from South Africa, and all of his degrees were from the University of Stellenbosch, which is one of the leading institutions in South Africa. He joined the Oregon State University faculty in 2006, and his research focuses on perennial cropping systems with a focus on modeling, biological control, herbivore-induced plant volatiles, and mating disruption. And since moving to Oregon, he's worked on a management of several important invasive species of fruit and vine crops, including vine mealybug, spotted wing Drosophila, and brown marmorated stinkbug. And among his awards since coming to Oregon State University are the Oldfield Jackman Team Award from the College of Agricultural Sciences, which he got in 2013, the Entomological Society of America Pacific Branch Entomology Team Award, the Entomology Society of America Pacific Branch Excellence in IPM Award, and the Savory Award for Outstanding Young Faculty Member of the College of Agricultural Sciences of Oregon State. So clearly, Vaughn's Well, I'd like to get the seminar started today. Can I get your attention, please? Thank you. I think the first thing I'd like to do, though, because is just to say I feel like something is really missing here, and that's Maurice Calver. And so, if it's possible, I'd just like to have a moment of silence, okay, for Maurice. And thank you, because it's been years and years and years, and they're always at these seminars. You know, it's really...
And they also contribute to the seminar.
Contributing.
Financially, every year.
Okay, thank you, Michael. But it's really, I think all of us are shocked and saddened. So, anyway, I'd like to introduce our seminar speaker today, and it's Vaughn Walton, who's an associate professor of entomology in the horticultural crops department at Oregon State University in Corvallis. Vaughn holds a three-way appointment. Actually, I guess it's a four-way appointment, but we'll say three-way, teaching, research, and extension. So he